All right, so now let's talk about the universities and the European university system. So, medieval Europe. Universities existed for the rich who excelled at grammar school. So the universities were made by and made for the rich who were good at grammar school. So your universities would be a collection of nobilities' sons and merchants' sons. This is where in a place like England, you see the great universities be established. Two of them that would be examples would be Oxford and Cambridge were established during medieval Europe. Two of the most respected universities in the world even today. So, nobility and merchants, with an exception. If you were a peasant, if you were poor, you could be educated with permission of the noble whose land you were living on. So if somehow you were a poor peasant and somehow you learned how to read, somehow you learned how to write, and then you wanted to go to the university, it was up to the noble who owned your land to say yes or no. They could say no. They could say yes. Think about this. These nobles owned the land. The peasants were living on a small piece of land. Most of them never left their land in their life. Hardly ever. They never left the noble's land, probably never in their whole life, from birth to death. They weren't educated. There were actually laws against educating the peasants. The nobility didn't want them to be educated. They saw them as a threat. If the poor farmers in their land got an education, maybe they'd leave. Maybe they'd become a businessman or a merchant. Or maybe they'd learn that actually how to read the Bible, and it couldn't be used against them like it was at this time. So, for the peasants, are they free? By our modern definition? Are they slaves? I wouldn't go that far. But they're also not really free either, are they? So, these peasants, if they can get the education, they can go. But they would have to excel at grammar school if they could have got in. Or just learned how to read and the noble can grant them permission. But again, probably more often than not, they would say no. Girls, nope. All right. Education for girls. Oh, one last thing, by the way, the peasants would call their noble master or lord too. Education for girls. Summary. Very few girls went to school. Education was in the home. Well, let me start off with the poor. The peasants, the men and women, were actually more equal than the rich. If you were a poor man or a poor woman, you weren't that far different than your husband. Why would that be? You were both on the farm. You were both poor. Neither of you were going to school. Neither of you were leaving your land. Neither of you probably learned how to read or write. You were probably equals in poverty. Yep. Say it again? Probably someone who was living on this plot of land somewhere else, yeah. So, good question. So the women had a lot of work to do on the farms who were poor, and the men did too. And the women had more of a share of child-raising duties as well. The rich is a different situation. If you are a noble woman, you're taught at the home how to keep up your kids and husband. So you're responsible for the upkeep of your husband and kids. So if you're a noble woman and your husband is kind of like not dressed well, the thought in medieval Europe would be, what is wrong with his wife? Why is he dressed so badly? How did he get out of the house looking like that? That would be the thought in medieval Europe. So women's responsibilities were to keep up the kids, keep up the husband, and keep up the home. Now, now, when women were educated, they could be educated in their home. They could be educated in another noble person's home. Sometimes an older noble woman would do the educating, like how to raise the kids, how to cook, how to do all these things, how to act at social parties, and all those kind of rules. The woman could travel overseas. This would happen sometimes. Like sometimes an English woman might be educated in a place like France. And maybe the woman would learn how to play a musical instrument or sing, and that's about the limits. Again, we got words here. I got my summary has how many words? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. But then this is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is how you want to keep it to something that looks like this. And we got 2 pictures from that time period. Let's go to our last one here and the ticket out. I'll just do this one real quick and I'll stop recording. You have 2 ticket out questions, which should review the material that was learned. This doesn't have to be a deep thinking question. This could be kind of like a question where you could put down answers for mine. There is more than one answer for these, but it's not the same and not as many inferences. You don't need inferences. You can ask about something more particular you talked about. And I'll stop the recording here.